Thank you very much for the invitation first. It's a pleasure to be here in Stockholm. I'm sorry my Swedish is so fucking poor that I used a very bad English. So um, yeah, it was super great to visit in graveyard. It's always nice to go in graveyard. But that Stockholm graveyard is so beautiful and full of masterpieces. Even the new one, I mean the Johan Selsing building was super nice. I never seen it before that trip. So um, that was a great experience. But today I will talk about a little bit about the new wood. I don't know is it what is new, what is old, but anyway, it's more question about how we use the wood in a different way and a different type of buildings, and how we research and develop our doing what push the borders and try to find a new level for the solutions. And sometimes we succeed, and sometimes we doesn't succeed at all. But that's the other story. We just talk today for the succeed, to make great things, and I don't show these bad things at all. Um, For myself, I'm just a countryside boy, like that kid in the middle of the field, and my roots and my culture comes in a farmhouse, middle of the nowhere, and so I learned quite a young age that wood is a nice material, just because it's everywhere. There's a wood. There's even more, 100 million times more wood than people. So woods are my friends more than people. No, that's not the true. But anyway, the idea about the wood that way, that okay, if you fell down the wood, you must use it that way, that it's there's a really reason to do it. So that's the key point for the doing wooden things, that of course there's an ecological background these days, that if you make the wooden buildings, you store it about the CO2, but it's also for the mental way to think in that way, that when you take down trees, you must really have reason to do it, not just to burn it. It's a waste of material. So that's my background practically. My office is, it was earlier, it was Lassila Hirvilammi, just because there was partner Teemu Hirvilammi 10 years, so 5 years ago. And after that we looked at different directions. And I also have that kind of idea when, just because I found in my office in Oulu, what is a place where I studied, the University of Oulu, what is a world Northest Architect School. It's located somewhere here. And I always have that kind of thinking, okay, we are not like a metropolitan, so we are peripheral architecture. So if you are not, can't be like OOPEAA, you must be like a OOPEAA. And the other thing was that when the Bjerke Ingels started rising like a big company, BIG, I always think that, okay, we are small, we are not big, we want to be small. So these are a lot, that's just one reason. But in the other reason is also that that map tells a little bit the way how we people usually look the world. Just because we always think that we are center of everything. It doesn't matter where we're located. Are we in Finland? If you move this red dot in Asia, you have a different perspective, and something else is somewhere in the periphery. So you are always in the periphery. You are always in the center of everything for your personal life. And the third reason is it's also a very important part of that. It's when I start my career and when I win first competition, it was that small chapel what Ulva already talked a little bit. And between the process, I understand that you can really make a great things in everywhere if you find the right people, right solutions, right way to do it, or that kind of momentum that you really can make a amazing architecture. The OOPEAA is these days I think there's now in 18 people, and it comes more like an international team last 5 years. So people from Japan, from China, from Germany, from Finland, from Austria, so different cultures. and it gives also for the little bit new way to think architecture for the solutions, just because everybody have totally different kind of perspective for the what is great architecture, how to do architecture, how the architecture influence for the environment, what we try to do. Between the process, we are always talking about quite a lot. What is our goals for the making architecture? Just because it's quite easily goes that way that you just go in bigger project, making more and more money, and helping for the somebody making more and more money, maybe not yourself, and you lose the targets. What is the most important things to make architecture? And when we make that installation to New Nordic exhibition in 2012, we try to find just basic things, what is important architecture for us. And it was like a starting point for the develop the thinking and understanding that what we are doing and why we are doing. So basically our target is always create a better life, make that kind of solution that people who use the buildings or use the city life or use the peripheral environment, they get something for that. So balance between the nature and everything. But anyway, it's like in this case, for example, it's just simple material what we develop with high quality carpet and making very simple way using the light that way that it's really are like a small chapel indeed that building. And we have 3 values what we are using when we start to make the new project. We just care things. It's more like a caring and be responsibility for the environment, but it's also caring about all kind of getting what kind of emotions or what kind of feelings for the solutions effect for the people who use the buildings. We always try to be very curiosity for the thinking, so to make an experimental like a new techniques. So we always think, and I try to think that way, that when there's something new, it can open the door for the new solutions. So speaks, I don't know in Sweden, no, well it's a similar lot than in Finland, but it quite easily goes that way that all things going very limited possibilities. I mean the basic, for example, the housing project, they are like almost similar. You can just choose, for example, what kind of facade you use, and that's almost all. But in also that kind of curiosity that we try to learning what is history is possible to learn in the historical solutions. That way that, okay, there's a technical layer, but there's also a little bit like aesthetical layers, that what can we find something what we can use like a foundation and go to the next level and make something new using for that. And of course we want to take sometimes even the risk or invest some kind of solutions. And the context is of course one of the key word the work making things. I was in 2000 and maybe it was 2004 when the Rem Koolhaas get the Mies Prize, and we just get the only shortlisted. And he gave a lecture and starting for that fuck the context, but I don't think that way. I think that the context is super important just because it's glue the solution for the environment and location. And I think that there's always something what you can continue or what you can learn or use for the historical perspective and make the new solutions. And that way it somehow plays some game for the history and future. But there's also social level for that. So social level, how the social environment is possible to develop when you are designing for the solution. Can you learn something? Can you do something totally different than before? And what it can bring for the social community, for example. So that's the thing what we use. And first I will show and talk. I don't talk the plans like that. Okay, there's a kitchen and so on, but I more talk about how these works are built and how they are effect for the architecture, what we are doing now. So I was student when I win this competition. So it was time when I hand draw everything. Of course, we used computer already in the 1995, but the competition was 1998. And the idea was that there's a church what is built totally by hand using the local materials. So I think that it could be nice to also draw the drawings by hand, just because there is a link between the hand drawing and making architecture. So there was student competition what I win in that time, and the building itself is very small, but it comes like a interesting journey about the learning the material, but also for the social communication of the people who are talented to build even buildings. So when I make a competition, I never realized, never waiting that they really will build it, just because usually there's a lot of student competition and they never build the buildings. But in these times, they really said, okay, we want to build it, and I was almost a little bit shocked. But anyway, it was really interesting to start it, so just make a drawings, try to understand the possibilities, just because first when you started designing that kind of buildings, that okay, everything is made by hand, no machines, no that kind of materials what you can use these days. So what you can do, first you think that it's a limitation. But when you understand that the handmade things is full of possibilities, so it totally open the possibilities to even make a more interesting solutions. I understand that, oh, that's really great moment to make something totally different than usually. And the process going that way, that there was a local people, just volunteers, who built some part of building, and there was also in the same time the youngsters who learning to build buildings. So they master teaching these youngsters to do joints, make not the smoke joints, but make a joints, and do things better, and try to learn how it made before. And that was great journey, or great way to learn how to make things that way, that everything are part of the architecture. So in this case, the all materials are comes from 5 kilometers on the side from the site, and all are, I mean, everything is visible that way, that you can see the construction. Construction is part of the architecture. The material is part of the architecture, and everything really brings something for the final result. Well, we designed that, and there wasn't any kind of direct example for that, just because there is a basic structure. It's just for the log structure, and the size comes from the material, what is possible to find in that location. It's about 10 meter times 10 meter, and it's like a cubic, like 10 meter, 10 meter, 10 meter. And the solution that all this code, what gives the protection about the log structure, it's hanged on the eaves, so it's levitating around it. It comes very tricky, interesting solutions, just because you must take care of all kind of details, how the wood moving, how it's possible to take care it that there is no problem for that moving between the years when the log structure compressing and that kind of things. So the old masters bring something, I try to do something, and finally we make a model what shows the structure, also people who build it. So they use the model like a understanding the complex of the roof structure, and it was really useful in the construction site. It was also interesting in this case that it takes 5 years to get the building ready, and they only build it, mostly build it in the summertime. In this case, they make logs in the winter, just because it's you must take it down the trees like full moon and so on. So it's that kind of very interesting thing behind everything. But in this case, it was even possible to do it that way. That how the people think that it's the best way to really get the better quality. And these volunteers, I think that almost everybody already died, just because it was for 2004, and they make these all 50,000 singles between the year in the inside of some kind of a factory, and talk naughty stories when they make it, and it was like a group of brothers But it's also effect for the social spirit of these very small villages, because there lives only 3,000 people that time. Maybe now is even 2,000 people, and it comes like pop out the map of the Finnish map, and they are super proud. They take part for the process, and they use it, they own it, they build it, they love it. So it really comes like a social process, very simple, very hardcore architecture. If you make this kind of pure concrete building in the middle of the nowhere in the forest, people hate it. They try to burn it, but of course it can't burn it if it's concrete. But even in wooden, they don't burn it, and that's great. This is not Norway. This is Finland. So the process was more about the learning, doing, using material that way, that what is possible, but also learning for the communication with the local people. And the result is quite unique that way, that they really make the all logs like using the axe, and all these wooden parts are part of the structure, and there's nothing, I mean, nothing extra. Everything is just for the pure function. Even the ceiling inside is part of the structure, so it keeps the stable for the roof structure. There's also a very funny detail for that, just because when they take down the pines and they realize that, oh hell, we don't have any more the enough big pines in the parish of Kärsämäki, they said, okay, we have only spruce. So you can see the different color of light. So there's starting to use the spruce material, but I think, okay, no, maybe it's not so serious. But you can see the different color of different wood materials. Just because using the pine in the log structures, just because it's more strength and more longer and whatever. And the original idea was that, okay, we will paint the white this interior space, but it was so nice, that wooden material, that the feeling for that okay, I skipped and changed my mind, and okay, let's keep it like a wooden interior. And it was really nice and interesting project that way, that just because nobody's talking about the local things and locality and that kind of what comes close, its best thing and whatever. So it was like a really rare 10 years before everything. All right. And church. Next church was a little bit different kind of story, just because in Finland we have most of the churches are built in 1950s. And the reason is that people are moving to the more cities after 1950s, after Second World War. And the cities are growing, and they have built the new churches in these suburbs and part of the cities. And that means that we have culture to using the churches different way, for example, here in Sweden, just because we have multifunctional different kind of buildings, but you can use it more like a cultural building on the suburb center or city. So that's the one reason why we still make churches in Finland. And the other reason is, of course, that we are so religious. No, that's not true, but anyway, somebody wants to maybe believe that, but anyway. And the reason why I do churches is maybe that, okay, I win this first competition for the student, and I realized that there is a big social aspect, how the church influences the environment for the people who lives in that area. So I think that's important to give people also something else than just for the beer or something like that. So that is a little bit different kind of story, just because it was invited competition. So the first idea was that, okay, there's a will that they will build a new building, and they want it to look like church, and I don't really know what it really means. And nobody's in the team, just because there was a group of for Teemu Hirvilammi and also Jani Jansson, member of the team, and nobody really don't. We have totally different opinion for that. And we starting that way, that okay, maybe the exterior shape, it could be nice that it is very simple, but the interior can be super huge contrast between that. It could be nice that you have something amazing or something strange and something different. Maybe not strange, maybe something different. And I have that kind of dreams, just because I get ready this Kärsämäki church was super simple. It could be nice to make something what is more rich about the construction also in interior, different way. So the process was more like about the finding that kind of symbolic shape and try to understand how it reacts for the city structure. Just because this is a suburb of Jyväskylä. Jyväskylä located in the mid part of Finland, and there lives maybe 150,000 people. And this suburb, there lives about 20,000 people. And so people who leave this area use this like a central building. So the first, some kind of shape or idea about the structure and contrast between the exterior shape. And well, I have that kind of workshop in the countryside where I come from. So I go to countryside and take a piece of wood and start to do something with that. And okay, let's see how it goes. Just because I have that kind of idea that it would be nice that there's something that you can recognize that okay is simple, like old churches from the year 1000 or something like that. But it's total new. It's total different kind of when you look a little more carefully. So that way they start to idea that okay, it could be nice that have that kind of simple shape, a strong identity of the building. But also compress all spaces in the one building, just because there was a lot of solutions. Well, it was invited competitions. Almost all other solutions was make some kind of smaller part and bigger part, and it somehow feels very very not so interesting this location. So that way it starts, and we start to design it. And in this case, it was interesting to try to find using the new techniques and using the prefabrication and that kind of possibilities for the technique in 2006, 7, well, 2008 when we designed this, and it was built in 2009, 2008, 2010. So we make a 3D designing together with the construction designing and integrate everything together almost first time in our office history. And it's start to be quite interesting how we can put together the construction, all technical things and also for the idea about the architecture. We try to find that kind of solution together with the construction designer and how we can use this grid cell structure that way that okay it's really gives the good balance between the interior, but it's also part of the structure, but we didn't find the way to do it. And finally it goes the other way that we start to do it that way that they built primary construction, and after that I invited the Swiss carpenter in our team, and we create together that kind of way how you laminate that grid cell structure or stabilize the building on the site or prefabricated that. But it's super interesting that you can't make that kind of solution together with a construction designer, just because in that time they don't have tools to do it at all, or rooms in the mind to do it at all. I don't know. And well, it was a good way to do it, just because it's quite simple to do it, and it really brings the idea about the construction and also the feeling for the making the sacral spaces together, and it works together with everything. And in this case, it's that way multifunctional that you can combine together different spaces, so there can be different kind of events in the same time. You can use the middle part like a gallery inside. You can divide it like two different spaces and so on. And the kids can use that lower part, or they can be concentrated in the higher part. But that's also effect for the local culture that way, that the people start to use this many active way. So there's a lot of concert, a lot of all kind of events, a lot of course the wedding and that kind of events also. But also cinema club, what his name is, Cinema Paradiso, so it's every week there in the church. So it's a multifunctional cultural building together with the church function in this suburb. And in this case the material is just spruce, what comes also quite close. So what you see in the first project, you also see a little bit like that kind of solution in that case also, that we try to find the local manufacturing, what you can use the local simple materials that way that you can get it something extra or something even better what nobody's waiting for. All right, and that's the story about the local church. Okay, next I talk a little bit about the Periscope Tower, what is more about the landscape, our architectural project than just for the building. Just because we making some, this is Seinäjoki, where I have two offices, the one in Helsinki, one in Seinäjoki. And the reason is that we work in quite a lot of that middle part of Finland area, so the people who work in the Seinäjoki office working more with these clients. And there lives about 70,000 people in that small city, and they developed a new residential area here, and there's a man-made lake in the top of the hill, what is a very strange situation. And we try to find a way to activate this dam side new ways, just because the local people use this very active sporting, skiing, all kind of things in that area. So together with the landscape architect Tommi Heinonen, we create the system how the people can access the water side more than before. So there's it's quite a small thing, but anyway, there's a swimming places. There is a place for where you can put the boat in. There's a different kind of way to access the seaside, the lakeside, but. Also, the one idea was that it could be nice that there's some kind of view deck that you can go a little bit higher and see the whole lake view in that location. And that was a starting point that, okay, we will make it also small building there. And the first idea was to just make a deck so everybody can access there, and there's no limitation who can go there. But we realized that when you lift up, it's like a few meters, you don't get anything extra for that. And there's no view doesn't change so dramatically that it's a waste of everything. So the first idea was that to make some kind of tower, and next step they want that, okay, it would be nice that that there's a possible that everybody can access there. And it comes fatter and bigger, but they don't have money to make it very high, so it looks like more like a cubic thing. So we make that kind of idea in the office that, okay, it could be nice that you have a huge periscope there so the people can see the view in the ground floor, but also people who want to climb up, they can do it and use it like a view tower. So it's a huge periscope. What a stupid idea. But they buy it anyway and they build it. Sometimes it happens. And basically the idea was that it's just simple building, and it's a prefabricated thing that way that it's easier to make it, just because there was also process in this case. So the local people, 16, 17 years old people who are studying to making buildings, they take care for the building process. So they're learning and doing at the same time. And I was happy for that, just because it's always nice that people who are learning things, they make something great than not so interesting. So, but that was also a reason why we want to prefabricated that structural systems, because it's quite a difficult place, windy and that kind of place to build it on the side. So basically, it's a structure made by 4 pieces, and there's a CLT, cross-laminated timber, in the center, what is like a primary structure also for the building. And there's just glulam columns and beams, what makes the structure around this staircase area. So itself is quite simple. And after that comes the large facade, what installed on the side. And of course there's a Japanese detail, just because Kazunori Yamaguchi, who is working in my office, it's taking part for that, and are some kind of expert or interesting about making all kind of details all the time. Of course we all are, but anyway, it's a big scale is important also. So in this case, it was just simple idea about how it works. This is just open facets. All 4 facets is the same picture, but anyway, you can enter here. You can see the view here in the periscope, and when you walk this tour, even the top of the building, you can see the landscape different ways. So you can get the total different perspective how it was before, and the basic idea how it works, and some model. It was exhibition in Japan, and that's the reason for the model. Nice model, and of course how the joints are made is important part of that kind of thing. So finally, the youngsters start to build it, make a foundations, and shiny, happy people working with the concrete. And well, they are quite shiny. I mean, they're young. So these guys take care for the building process, and I see every time when I visit on site that they are proud of that. I was very proud of that they are proud of that, just because it's so great that they do something what they think that it's the worth to do. Just because usually when the people studying about to make a buildings, they just make some kind of doghouse or something what is not so interesting. They don't have any relationship between the architecture. They have a relationship that they must do some architect work in the later and they hate it. But in this case, they really make it and they are proud of that. And it was more like also for the very nice social project for them. And finally, it was 2016. It was ready, and it's just simple thing. You can go there, you can see the building. It makes some kind of landmark. But the process when you enter there, when you look the view in the periscope, and how the view is opening the different levels, different openings when you put your head away, not away, just look a little bit outside of the building, and different way in the different steps and places, and how the light works together with the material, and materiality is super important, and people really love it. They really take a lot of pictures there and use it that way that if they're running around this lake, it's about 25 kilometers when you run around, or bicycle. It's they take a rest there and maybe eat something in the top of the building, or maybe youngsters they usually take a plastic bag and full of beer and go to upstairs. And that's the reason why there is that net that they can jump down. We are in Finland and they want to jump down. I'm sorry for the bad joking. Okay. All right. Anyway, it's very simple, very small thing, very cheap building. It's 7,000 euros and 70,000 euros and that kind of not so big architecture, but it influenced quite a lot of people who live in this area. So that way, I always believe that even the small project and small works are that way important that somehow it keeps all things quite close for you. So you must design the all things that way that you care it. You care all kind of details. Okay, we started designing about that wooden housing block in 2011. It was time that I a little bit asked myself that what is the reason to make the wooden housing block, just because it's so easy to make a concrete buildings like it always make. And the idea was also that using the little bit different kind of technique for that. So I realized that it could be great to do something else. You can develop the event or do a different kind of buildings than what is possible to make it. Hey, don't go. Okay, thank you. So developed architecture also in the same time. And it also gives the diversity for the making for example, the apartments. Just because in Finland the making a housing project is super limited, so that way that there's a lot of rules. The PEAP, the Skanska, the YIT, these all nice company who's also operating in Sweden or comes from Sweden. They have a lot of rules to make for example, the housing projects. So there's a lot of limitation and not so much room to make a great architecture. But in the same time, this a little bit later make this statistic, but I understand that if you think about what's happening in the future, just because of global trending going that direction very dramatic all the time, that there is more and more urbanization in the world, and it means that we really must build about 3 billion apartments in the future. And if you think about how much the steel and concrete makes the CO2 waste or that kind of in the world, 8% of the all CO2 comes from that two materials. And on the other hand, as I talked when I started to lecture, that the 1 ton of CO2 it's inside the 1 cubic meter of wood. So if you use the wood that way, that it's like a lifeline is 200 years or even longer, it's super nice just because there grows like that kind of forest 2 or 3 times or 4 times in between this time. So it's only way to get ecological solution indeed in the big scale. And this is not in Finland. It's a little bit different numbers if you compare about Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. So about 40% of the CO2 emissions comes from the buildings, and it's not the building process. It's making material, build the buildings, use the buildings, and also take it down. So the whole lifeline for the buildings make a quite big part of the ecological footprint. So that's the reason why we I say that okay, yes, it could be super nice to make the wooden housing project. So we started to develop the solution in 2011 together with Lassila, who is the developer company, and Stora Enso, who is also a Swedish-Finnish forest company. It's maybe the 4th biggest in the world. And that time they also started to develop the modular system, the wooden, what is made by CLT, so cross-laminated timber. And that was the way how we developed that we have an idea, Stora Enso keep going on with the structural idea, and we combine this idea together with a client who really wants to build the first 8-story high wooden building in Finland, what is possible after 2010. And this first one was quite interesting process just because we learn to use the CLT like a material, what is the possibilities, what is the regulations, what is the limitations for that material. I always say that CLT is a wood architect for the stupid people, just because basically they are just panels and you just screw or glue it together. So it's not like a typical wooden architecture. If you make a log structure or if you make a light structure or what, it's a full of joints and you must solve everything. But CLT is just put the corners together. That's all. So everybody can even use it. But in this case, we use this prefabrication. I mean, the modular system, is it flexible or not? I don't know. But anyway, it's possible to make it flexible. And of course, there comes the limitation or solutions that way that, okay, it's possible to transport, make this everything total already in the factory and transport on the site these elements. And in this time we learn possibilities also, just because there's possible to make some detail for the balcony. It's possible to make the bigger corridor or atrium between the apartments, just because it's easier to make a different temperature, for example, the different rooms. So it's not very expensive or very unecological to heat the whole building very carefully. I mean the big corridor space, for example. And how you make things together, it makes it even cheaper than make a concrete building. And just because the only reason the things is always the euro when you ask the client perspective many times. And one important journey for that was try to find what is the large scale wooden architecture, what is the how it integrates for the local context, in this case like a Jyväskylä case. How you can use it that way that it's not like a anonym architecture, what you can just repeat everywhere like 1970s and a little bit 60s, 70s, and how you can make it that way that it's also possible to get the quality, but also for the quality of architecture. And we started with the first one, And what is very happy, what I really like, it's just for the process, just because the building process is quite fast. In the same time, when they build the concrete things, they of course make these cubical things, as you know. Of course, there's all countries is some kind of modular factories. But in this case, they start to install these boxes, and it takes 1 week, 1 layer, and the construction time is very fast. I mean, it's just half a year totally. So it means that it's more safety, more try to do it in our climate, for example. But it's also less dusty. If you think about a more urban solution, it's also less noisy. If you think about the urban solution, so there's more prefabrication, less that kind of things on the side. But in this case, I want to do something also by hand. So finally they installed the facade on the site. It's also made in the factory, but it's installed on the site, and that's the reason. The reason was that making architectural expressed that way, that it doesn't look like a modular building. It looks like a wooden housing project, and modular construction is just helping to make it more effective, that building. So I don't want to express the modular structure outside of the building in this case. But the one idea was also that, okay, if there's that kind of common spaces or corridor spaces, the idea was that, okay, it's a little bit mixer about the private house and the housing block, just because it's possible to get more air, more light there, more privacy when you go there. But anyway, it's also for the place where the people can meet if they want. But we Finns, we never want to meet anybody in the corridor space. If there's somebody, I go to the back. There's nobody. But it also helps that people, just because the building is identity, they even talk each other, and they are even more social in this kind of, just because there is identity of building in this case, just because it was first that kind of wooden building in Finland, and get a lot of all kind of prices. Prices are prices, but anyway, it's nice to of course get some kind of visibility for the project. And this case was ready 2015, early of the 15, and this is just for the end of the last year. The second one was built and just ready in the end of the year. That's because the idea for the whole block was that there is 3 brothers together, and they are a little bit different, and the scaling going more smaller in the first building, and the number 1 was highest, and the other one going lower. So we make a little bit different variation inside the building. So there's a staircase area a little bit different, but anyway there's a wood visible. There's a little bit similar materials. The quality of the apartments, they are super basic. I mean that the price is mid-level in this area, so it means that it's not very expensive. So it's just a regular basic housing project. And well, in this summer they will be ready this whole block. So totally 10,500 square meters and 200 units will be ready in this summer in this location. And the church, as I saw, it is located here. So there will be a nice OOPEAA corner of Jyväskylä church and also the housing block. Yeah, it will be ready this year. I'm happy for that. We have made some variation to using the same system and using the wood material that way, that okay, this is manufacturing totally also in facade on the factory, but anyway it's more about try to find the solution. But the one thing what I'm a little bit frustrating is that in Finland, when we make a solution what works quite interesting way, we never can develop the things and like a next level. It's always like that. We must start to repeat it and make a worse and worse variation easily for that. And that's the one reason why we are also interesting about the other markets, just because it gives the possibility to develop the solution even new level or new way. Is there time? Is there still time? Still time, okay. Until midnight. All right. Well, there's a lot of wooden project going on, just because we have also made a research project together with the DTU, the Danish University, and Stora Enso also. So there's a lot of interest and going on in different places, and even more this is not updated, but there's even more project going on in the world. But I'm not interested about who make the highest wooden building. It's not my cup of tea at all. But anyway, of course, it gives open the new possibilities to make the wooden buildings even higher, or even lower level, different way. Okay, I will show the Suvla Chapel. What is the last year? We get ready last year. This kind of new chapel in the multicultural area of the close to Helsinki. Espoo is the next city to. It's a Helsinki metropolitan area. So this area is that kind of suburb where at least 40% of people comes in other cultures. So basically, it means that that there's a lot of different kind of religions. And the parish of Espoo, they want to build their building where it's different kind of functions mixed together that way that they are visible in the center of that place. But it's also possible that all kind of people who want to use the building, they can access there. So basically, the building is itself like a atrium courtyard, and all functions are around that. And it means, okay, there's that multicultural diagram, but anyway, it means that, I don't want to talk plans. It means that there's little bit, this is a little bit like a simple diagram for that, but anyway, there's a chapel, multifunctional space with the different functions. There's some offices, multifunctional meeting places. There's a place for the youngsters and kids, and there's also a place for or room for what is rented to Espoo city. That it's like a kindergarten, or that place where the kids and adults and all kind of people use in the same time. So the building itself, there is quite different functions mixed together. And we started this like making ecological chapel. What it ever means that the client wanted it will be ecological. So we make some kind of LCA calculations for that. What is the material, how it works, how we can use it that way, and compare, for example, the exterior wall that way, that is a wooden, or is it copper, or is it brick, or what is the material for that. And finally we find that the copper, using the copper is not so, just because it's totally recyclable. So it comes like that LCA footprint, it's almost similar like using the brick wall. The wood wall was much more ecological, but in this case we don't want to do it, just because it's also question about the architecture, just because they're needed for some kind of eaves or whatever, and it looks very nice. But it's also for that way that they must change and take care it much more often than this solution. So that was the reason for the exterior wall. But the other reason is also for the patina, just because I'm big fan for the patina, that try to find always the material that way that it's to get the nice patina between the years, and goes even more beauty when it gets more age. It's like a human, it's going more beauty with the more age. Sometimes it's like that, but sometimes it's something else. But anyway, it's interesting to see the process. For example, the copper, when it's brand new, it's so shiny, so amazing, and it goes like a matte. After that it goes brown, after that it goes more dark, it's almost black, what is always beauty for the architect perspective. And after that it comes step by step green, and you don't even know where it goes green, and that's super beautiful. Just because you can't control everything. I love it. So itself, the building is just simple, and you can see the reflection about the context also for the shape. But it wasn't the issue about the shape, but it was more about give the main function visible in the outside also, and also get the natural light using the chapel space. But people who use it, the local people, in this area lives about 30,000 people. They really use it very active way for the kids and also for the different functions. And we use in interior spaces, and also the main structure was some kind of hybrid. So some walls are concrete, some walls are wood. and basically the all roof structure is wooden, and we cladding this everything again, this kind of spruce, but making that kind of way that it's more about prefabricated and just install and get the routine for that, like 3 different pieces, and how it works together with the light, how it works together with the shadow. It's important part of the feeling and idea for the material. It was really nice to hear for the local people, and they talk about that even the just because there was a little bit like against the Muslims and Christians, there was some debating for that, but they even visiting using the other religion places now in these days in this location, and it really helps the people understand the different point of view of different philosophy of life better way. It can influence that way. So if it influences that way, it's a great thing. Yes, it's just a simple. And I will stop in this project, I think so. So last year we get ready this kind of public building. It's located close to the Helsinki city center. The market square is here. You take a ferry. It's 7 minutes from the market square, and it's island of Lonna, and it's all buildings are built in a Russian period, so 19th century, and the Lonna sauna was idea that they have started to use these buildings where is the old mine storage and old military use buildings. They have changed the function in 5 years, 3 years ago. And there's now the meeting places, there's a restaurant, there's a cafeteria, there's some kind of just for you can rent the room there if you want. And now the idea that there will be the new public sauna for that location. And we started this like a 2040. At the first we try to understand what is the reason why they want to build more and more public saunas in Finland again. So that we have that kind of culture that okay, it was more, the sauna was more like a thing where the people goes together, and it was still that kind of idea about the 1920s. Of course, it was more like a family goes together to sauna, not like everybody. And in between the 1970s, 60s, it comes more and more like an independent thing, and all apartments are even independent saunas. And 2010, they changed that kind of culture, or a little bit even earlier, that there's that kind of sauna for the some kind of experience saunas. So they built more and more that kind of gondola sauna to ski desert and that kind of things. But we think that Lonna sauna will be the sauna for the retreat. So the people, they really step the boat, they leave their daily life behind and go to this very small, tiny place. They can eat there, they can maybe drink something there, and they go to sauna and really enjoy the path that way, that it's possible to be almost like our own cottage almost in the center of the city center. So it's amazingly beautiful contrast when you go there. And the idea about the function is it's very, very simple. So the pot washing is downstairs, and the sauna function in the upstairs, and in the same space. That's because we have very limitation how much we can use the space, what is the size of the buildings, just because there's a lot of rules for the museum and what they give for the built in this location, just because there is no master plan for that. So basically we have 2 sides, so it means that there is a place for the women and men. It's not mixed, it's just for that function, that there's a man's side and a women's side, and some kind of public services also in the same building, and upstairs for the sauna function. And the idea was used for the wood structure, and we try to find the local small manufacturer who can build the log structure like that, and we find it. So the small company who take care was the father and 2 sons make a working there and build it very simple, beautiful way. This kind of surface is what is visible in this building. So the material comes like a super important part of that simple retreat or simple feeling for for the process. Although, of course, it's always debating with the builders and everybody what is going on and how we can do it. Even simple buildings. Finally, we get it ready. So the new building is just for the modest, simple building there. It looks almost that it's always been there, but you can see it. Anyway, it's a building of that time. And how it reflects, how it works together with the water is important. And place where the people can hang around together when they have going out to sauna. They sit down there, go to swim somebody, which is always very cold the water, but anyway they go. Even I have visited there. But it's simple. It's also ritual. They're heating these buildings like 6 hours, 5 hours per day, and it happens in the outside here. So the fire is visible outside when it's a heating process going on. And all spaces, also in exterior spaces, they are part of the using building. So you can go there. You can use this like taking shower in the when if you go to the swim if you want to do it. But anyway, it's more about the link between the undressing and for the sauna function. The simple material, as always, also inside, so just concrete brick with the overblasting black, and just for the spruce, just because it's cheap material and beautiful. And idea about that. The washing is total private process, so people sit down there, they're washing themselves using just a simple thing. But when you go up, you can see there's quite a lot of light at the summer times, and you can also see outside the view, many different levels, different way, and enjoy the path there. And well, it's only open in the summertime, so if you go there after of 4th of May, you can visit there. You can just take a ferry and go there and enjoy the public sauna spirit in Helsinki. I think it's maybe, yeah, I'm talking about 1 hour. Is it enough? There is still something, but I don't. Maybe it's not so interesting. Do you wanna listen, or do you wanna stop? No. Okay, I showed just something what is going on or what we are designing just last few months. There was last year there was competition to China. The idea was just creating the ecological concept for the Olympic Games. So because usually it's more like this kind of situation what's happening in there. Everywhere the process is like a linear, but we try to find a way to make the China competition, in this case the Winter Olympic in 2022. It was a group of Finnish experts together with a PES architect who is quite a lot of working in also in China, but we are responsible taking care about the wooden architecture in this case. So we try to find a way to understand how you can create the system that way that it's more about the reuse, recycle, and also making materials, using materials that way that it's really ecological to do it. And first we of course think that okay, it could be great to use this kind of modular system, how we can develop the system in the China, just because they don't have their own manufacturing there. And we make a LCA calculation for that, and I realized that if they use in the buildings enough long, it's it's not only long, it's just 10 years, it comes the ecological, even bring the material to Finland, to China, this demonstration case. So we start to develop the idea that okay, let's make that kind of wooden concept with the wooden village, and in the same time between the process try to find the local cooperator and start to make the CLT even in these markets. But I don't know, it was interesting journey just because we create the idea about the making stadiums and that kind of buildings and whatever. We didn't make a master plan, don't do it. But anyway, we take care about these buildings, these stadiums and also these, but not ski jump. But anyway, it was interesting to try to find the systems and analyze that everything, how to do it and how to make it that way that it's possible to reuse, possible to use the wood that way that it's really ecological, is it possible to find the local manufacturing who really make a ecological wooden production, just because the using the wood, it's not ecological if there's no behind responsibility forestry. That's because it's like all materials that if you just take it away and there's no new, the planting the new trees and that kind of things, it's a disaster in the environment perspective. At the same time, we making this is, for example, just ready the kindergarten. It's quite huge, 250 kids for there. It's not very interesting. And in the other hand, we work in again one church, what is located in Tikkurila in Helsinki. And this case, there is an interesting process just because we try to compress all spaces what the parish use, like a one-off earth, and make it more ecological, make it more multifunctional, just because we have made that kind of research that we realize that they use maybe 10% of some space is not very effective, and some spaces are used like a 30%, and somebody's have own room, for example, and never visit there or once per week or something like that. So there's a lot of things what you can really do different way and get this solution even more active. And the one idea was also that we try to make it like a cultural center, but it's inside the church, not like that way that church is part of the cultural center. So it's a little bit different than quite many different places. So it's possible to change and use the spaces many different ways. All right, I think that now it's time to stop, just because I'm feeling like that. Thank you very much. It was super nice to come here.